Morning.
I was on mute. Sorry.
Did you watch the thing I did with Bernie and AOC and
I
Reverend
did
Barber?
not, although I had meant to, so I deserve credit for that.
You get credit for that. So I was on mute when it opened up, and so there's a great clip of Bernie going, "You're on mute, Alex. You're on mute."
I do want to clip that. That's amazing.
It is, and then I used the same thing that I say on Zooms when I leave myself on mute all the time, which is the tagline of the year: "You're on mute," which worked pretty well. And then I was able to talk about what's in the bill. That was a really great event. It was a super honor to be part of that one. So I am really happy that it started with Bernie being like, "You're on mute, Alex. You're on mute."
Well, now that we're all off mute, what is going on, Alex? Tell the fine people about the political chaos that is this week.
Yeah, it's all related. I mean, I went on a live stream to say what's in the bill, and that was before, here's what DC is like. So policy is beautiful. It's math. It's like you're looking for these elegant, simple solutions. The more complex something is, that's a loophole, and then industry can just put everything in that loophole. So you bake a cake, but it's like really simple, right? You don't want to be, and this is policy, and you're like, look at this beautiful thing that I built. I baked this cake, and it's in the kitchen. And then the last step is they just let an incontinent cow or bull, maybe with a mongoose riding it, just rampage through the kitchen. And then at the end of it, they serve the cake, and they're like, here you go. And you're like, oh man, why'd we do that last step? We should have eaten the cake right after we baked it.
All right, I have a couple questions. Who is the mongoose? Is the mongoose Joe Manchin, or is this more like the spirit of political?
I mean, like someone's Joe Manchin, someone's Kirsten Sinema. We've got Scott Peters in there, like a drunk cricket in the corner or something. Kathleen Rice right now, making bones for pharma. She's going to get 1 extra year of exclusivity into the biologics before we can negotiate. There are 2 drugs that fall into that window. Is at 12, and she's going to get it to 13, and she's still saying she's a no, but so it gives that window of 1 year. There's 2 drugs in there on Part B that in Part B and Medicare Part B, they make $4 billion a year. So this is how DC works. Probably like a $35,000 donation to some PAC, right? Like Kathleen Rice Victory something. You can search for it. You'll find her PAC, and there'll be like one $35,000 donation, right? So it's like a 5-figure donation. That's what I'm saying. It's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money. And what you buy with that $35,000 donation is $4 billion in straight cash for the companies. So this is the phase where that's happening. But at the same time, there are some stuff that actually did not face the rampages of the cow, mongoose, drunk cricket. I don't know why I have these images in mind for the various politicians, but like $150 billion to the beginning of a long-term care program, to home and community-based care in Medicaid for seniors, people with disabilities. This means that there's going to be literally millions of people, because it's permanent, who are kept out of nursing homes, who aren't warehoused in nursing homes, where private equity has turned the entire industry into death traps, where seniors and people with disabilities who want to stay in their homes, who want to age in dignity, in place, but they're not allowed to. And they're put into nursing homes, and they die in nursing homes. And the abuses in nursing homes are so bad that people don't believe them, even though you look at COVID and you look at the percentage of death that occurred in nursing homes, and there were death traps before COVID. So $150 billion to that. That's a win. That cake there was no bull rampaging through it. That we just built a cake and then they cut that cake in less than half, but it's still half a cake. It's quite delicious, and real people are going to be incredibly benefited by it. $555 billion into addressing climate is the most hopeful part of the bill by far and away. I think it's clear that in President Biden's eyes, this is a climate bill. And he wanted to deliver it at COP26. But, Joint Presidents Sinema and Manchin had other ideas. But $555 billion into climate, it's like that actually helps roll back some of my direst worries about the world that we're going to leave for my children. And, it's not enough. Obviously, it's not enough, but we never get enough. The struggle always continues. We're going to expand Medicare only to hearing. Why? Because Joe Manchin sucks. Because this dude who represents a state where 30% of the seniors don't have any teeth in their mouth, he blocked dental just because he's an asshole. He doesn't even care that much about it. And then to make sure that no one else got the asshole crown, because, Sinema was vying for it and Rice and Peters, he just blocked vision as well. He's like, no glasses for seniors. We just saved $250 billion out of Medicare from driving down drug prices. We drive down your drug prices, my drug prices, and the system's drug prices. And we're saying we can't use part of that to pay the $35 billion to add to add vision. I mean, this is it is a debacle how our political system functions. But, Jocelyn, this is how our political system functions. So if you want to actually do something, this is the game that you're playing. I don't want to hear from the people who want to check out or pretend they're playing another game. Like, you tell me how you're going to get what you want or part of what you want, and then let's see. And for all of us who've been in here doing the work, it's incredibly exhausting to be, armchair analyzed, especially with such bad information going out there. Pramila Jayapal changed the entire game for progressives by blocking up the progressive caucus and then wielding that power effectively. And anyone who doesn't see that is not actually paying close enough attention to have an impact here. So I know it's a lot, Jocelyn, but here, I'll toss it back to you with one thing. They're voting on Build Back Better right now. And the only strategy that makes any sense is to whip to pass Build Back Better with everything that we've got. Because the alternative is zero. The alternative is not like, oh, we get zero or better. It's zero. That's it. It's either we get this or zero. And then, yes, we're going to have to fight to maintain it where it is the whole way, all the way to the president's desk. And it's a fist fight. So, like, people want to give up now because they didn't get everything that they want. And it's not a lot of people. It's just a bunch of loud people. And then since I do this, I get a lot of the loud people DMing me about all this nonsense. And it's a frustrating one. But we should I should remember that, pharma only wins, the industry only wins when we forget what we're fighting for. And I can't be super mad at the dupes and patsies on the left who fall for industry's game, like I can't get too mad at them. I can get mad at them because they're annoying, but I just keep telling them, I'm like, if you're arguing for the same thing that Mitch McConnell is arguing for, right, which is getting zero, you're probably on the wrong side here. There's no progressive argument of, oh yeah, but on this one, Mitch McConnell's right. We should get nothing. That's the progressive path forward.
Well, And okay, there's a lot of information for people. I think the big question is, okay, we're going to get some of what we want. It's more than what we've gotten in years. How many years? Decades. This is the best path forward we've had in a depressing number of decades, actually, when you think about it. I mean, when was the last time Congress did anything useful? The ACA doesn't count.
That's it. The ACA, though. I mean, Medicaid expansion is the last time. I mean, there's one other thing, which was this remarkable, miraculous thing that people ignore. And I don't want to, you can't tell where I am, my brain is, Jocelyn. I'm just a lot of information in my brain, been working hard at all of this. So ACA, and then it was Bernie Sanders' VA reforms. That was actually the only other thing that actually big ticket happened. And that was an amazing thing. That was in the divided Congress under Obama, and the Tea Party held the House. That was a big thing, and it was a good thing. And then under Trump, they passed the tax handout. And then everything else is not really, I think people totally don't understand that there's very few legislating years. So after this, it's basically nothing. Even if Biden wins re-election, you're barely going to see any configuration where you get another chance of legislating. That's how it was under Obama. And I'll always say the ACA was a huge accomplishment because of Medicaid expansion. Medicaid expansion alone is like the purest good that came out of Obamacare. And there's a lot of dross along that gold, but still this is kind of that thing, like people's lives were saved. I know that. I fought as hard as I could for the public option and I lost. And I learned a lot then. Like I learned we never should have been fighting for the compromise. The compromise was the public option. We never should have been fighting for the compromise. We fight for what we want. And then politicians are going to compromise. But then there's this last thing. Right now, when I'm whipping to get the Build Back Better across the finish line, I'm not fighting for the compromise. I'm demanding that we're going to add in vision and dental at the next steps of the game. But if you're whipping is when you're contacting offices and you're telling them to vote one way or the other. And luckily, most of the voices that you hear criticizing progressives right now from the left on this, they're on Twitter. Like you can just mute them out of existence. That's how much power they have. Their power ends at the barrel of a mute button on Twitter. Industry is whipping no. All Republicans are whipping no. If you whip no and the vote fails, you're whipping for zero. So it's all like, I don't know, Jocelyn, it just makes a more sense when you're here working on it and you see how laws get passed, and it in no way, and I don't know, maybe there was an era, but it was like vanishingly small, but it in no way, and I want everyone to hear this really clearly, it doesn't resemble that cartoon at all, how a bill becomes a law. That is absolute garbage take.
I can't believe you're talking shit on Schoolhouse Rock.
But I am. That's what I was looking for.
Fine Friday morning. Ridiculous.
But Schoolhouse Rock is wrong. We're getting stop swearing, Jocelyn. We will stop swearing. Schoolhouse Rock is not how things are made, unfortunately, because of one thing, the filibuster. If we got rid of the filibuster, Schoolhouse Rock would be correct. But Schoolhouse Rock gives people a false sense of hope that, one individual thing could actually pass out. It doesn't. That's not how it works. From now, after this legislating period forward for the next 6 years, there are certain things in DC called must pass. And those are like cliffs that got left in, but they're things that have to get passed. And usually they're things that like 90-something% of both parties vote for. For example, the $7.5 trillion over 10 years that we give to the military every single year is a must pass, the NDAA. So from now forward, all we try to do is hang, if we get BBB finished, and it's very possible that the corporate mercenaries and industry kill the Build Back Better totally. But after that, it's just trying to throw things in moving trains. And that would be a way better Schoolhouse Rock. It would just be like, how does a bill become a law? It's like, well, there's a corrupt train going through DC. It's filled with corruption. And you sit there and you try to throw your good stuff into that train filled with corruption and hope that none of the corrupt politicians notice.
I thought we did not encourage futility and despair on this show.
That's how I get. That's how you get stuff passed, though.
Okay, but then we have to say it in a hopeful way. There's this really fun game where it's like ultimate frisbee, but with pieces of legislation.
It's called Any Moving Train. But that's what this is. This is the largest moving train that we've got, and it's packed to the gills with stuff. That's why it probably will get across the finish line, is just because there are so much in there. Can I give for example? Senator Menendez. Senator Menendez is the he's the senator from Pharma. He's New Jersey senator. He's the worst. Cinema has taken his crown a little bit, but in the background, we know he works hand in glove with Pharma because Pharma is located in New Jersey. So he's our opposition there. But he's the champion on immigration, like absolute champion. And on that, I agree with him fully. And there are situations like that all over the place in DC where people are bad on one thing, but good on another. And it's the good on another that we're hoping is going to pull all of them who are bad on these other things across the finish line. They might lose on the one hand, but they're going to win on the other.
Well, and that's why I think we should just cancel it. Just cancel all of it. Plato had this idea a long time ago. A philosopher king who's anti-pharma. Just, by the way, I'm sorry. My views on Build Back Better are strongly influenced by the fact that my dear friend and yours are reading The Deficit Myth right now. Have you read this book? Am I allowed to talk about this right now? So it turns out money isn't real. Money is fake. Did you all know this? You knew this, right?
I did know this.
See, I didn't know. I still had this idea that money was a real thing, but it turns out that money is not real. And we actually do have the power to fund everything we want because we create the system that's all this is happening in. And it's so it's mind-boggling, so I'm sort of joking, but realistically, anyone who has any interest in anything should read this book. It's called The Deficit Myth. It's by Stephanie Kelton. And the point she makes is that we are still, even people we love, our progressive champions, are still talking about financial programs in government as if with the same energy that we run a household. And it's just fundamentally different. The United States owns everything in America, either intrinsically or through the fact that we create the laws which allow those things to pass. So we actually do have the power to get everything we want. And it is incredibly frustrating that we have to play ultimate frisbee with moving vehicles, because the reality is the government has the power right now to say, you know what, we're going to stop giving these incredibly profitable patents to Big Pharma. We've funded this. We're going to give it to the people. That would be very easy to do.
It'd be super easy.
It's elected corrupt.
And this is, well, that's the point, right? And yes. The point, though, that I take from that is you can either wish for a new system and then play in your brain on that system. And then you can win every time. And you're like, haha, I imagined a perfect utopia.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, I know. Or you can actually understand how things work, but understand that the game is played right here.
Right.
So if you want to know who are the Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton is kind of the textbook, the first book you should read about modern monetary theory. And I don't know if you finished it or not yet, Jocelyn, but we can talk MMT till forever on this show because it's so important. Do you know who believe and understand MMT and have forever, and they're just the stalwart believers in it?
No.
Republicans. Since Ronald Reagan, Republicans have understood absolutely, completely, and totally about the myth of money. They don't care about deficits. They love deficits. They understand that deficits are actually deficits that the government has is just putting money into the economy. So it's actually going to accelerate things. When you pay for things with a tax, you're putting money into the economy and you're taking money out of the economy at the same time. They're not related. They're like the money that you're taking out of the economy doesn't pay for the stuff that you're doing. You just make money that pays for the stuff that you're doing, and you take money out of the economy, it just slows it down.
Well,
right?
I think a really easy way for people to think about it too is, we created money to serve as an intermediary between people with power and people with resources. And the resources just exist. Money is a system that we've made up, but the resources are there. Drugs are real. Healthcare is real. The environment is real. And we have been so gaslit and Stockholm syndromed into this idea that the important thing is not a thing itself, which is the drugs, the healthcare, the trees, but the intermediary. And it's kind of shocking, we're out here arguing whether or not seniors are allowed to have teeth. And people will actually make the argument that no, we can't afford it.
We just can't afford it.
The intermediary is a myth.
Yes, but go with me on the Republican thing. Just like look at what they do when they get into power. Every single time, going back to Reagan, every single time they cut taxes. So when you cut taxes, that's actually expansionary as well. You're putting money into the economy, but they cut taxes on really rich people, which is extremely poorly targeted because rich people just take their money and they go to the Cayman Islands. But so what they do is they cut taxes and then they increase spending massively, usually military spending, but also just budgetary across the board on spending the government money, and they don't pay for any of it. They drive up the deficit massively, which makes the economy actually go. It works. That's the point. They're MMT. And then when Democrats take power, they're like, oh my God, the deficit. Who paid for the tax handout to rich people? The deficit. No one paid for it. It was expansionary. This is under Trump. At the same time, across the board, the government spending were at levels that had never been done under Obama. So under Obama, the Republicans try to cut all the spending as much as possible. And Democrats are like, yes, I'm being fiscally responsible. I'm going to balance the budget. And they're literally punching themselves right in the face. Just like, did you ever see those charts where they'd be like the private sector coming out of the 2008, and then the public sector would be like this. And that's because Obama didn't spend any money on the public. He actually spent less money on the public. And they'd say it like, look at this, the private sector. And you're like, you're hurting yourself. If the public sector was leading that, we were actually, and what that would mean is more roads, more bridges, more science. Maybe they would have developed a vaccine or they would have had Sentinel to detect COVID before it pandemicked the world. All of that, we would have been spending money on that instead. And I can come full circle on this because these assholes is not a swear, Brad, just for the record. You don't have to find every time I say that and edit it out for the podcast. And Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget are assholes. It's these people billionaires who pushed austerity, and austerity hurts people. It's cruel, but it's also stupid because that's not how money works. It never saves money. Do you know who is leading the charge against Build Back Better right now?
I mean, is that a trick question?
Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. It's literally Pete Peterson's people who are saying we need to see a CBO score before we vote for this, and they've got 5 Democrats on board with them, and that's enough to sink the bill, because these plutocrats, what they want is when Democrats are in power for no money to be spent. They don't want money to be spent, and then they look and they're like, look at the gas prices, look at the economy, and then they win in Virginia. It's such a simple thing forever. The Republicans are modern monetary theorists, and they make Democrats act on like classical economics, which have been out of date for over 100 years. And then Democrats are wondering how they get played all the time.
Well, I think part of the answer is in the psychology of the people that hold these beliefs. At the end of the day, for a lot, because again, when we talk about Republicans, we're talking about congressional Republicans. We're not talking about ordinary people who have all sorts of different diverse motivations and stories. But at the end of the day, congressional Republicans benefit way more for getting their way than congressional Democrats, who frequently are well-established people who are not actually vulnerable to the problems they're fighting. And that is part of our problem. And I'm not saying that like, oh, Democrats are bad, nor am I saying that millionaires can't be true progressives. But at the end of the day, we don't have many non-millionaires in Congress, and that's part of the problem. Republicans are benefiting in a huge way from, this, I don't even know what you would call it, because evil feels like too understated of a term. I mean, what is it called when you literally sell out the planet so you can have a slightly better summer home?
You mean the God that Mitch McConnell prays to in his office and the doors
Right.
closed? Blood for the blood God?
Yes.
The
yes,
God where you have to offer up pain, suffering, and death for millions in order to keep your own power. That's what it is. I call it, depends on what company I'm in. In polite company, I call it a deep nihilism. But I
enjoy that I'm not polite company. Continue.
Yeah, you're not polite company. The truth is it's people. I mean, it's as old as time, but these are people who will eat the future of their children and their grandchildren so that they'll get another minute of existence. Man, I'm all over the place, but it's like in The Fifth Element, the movie, which I think is a fantastic movie. I think Michael hates the movie, so we have a disagreement in our office on it, but I'm going to come down on it's a great movie. The evil guy there that Gary Oldman plays, so he sells out the whole universe to the evil, to the nothing that's going to destroy everything for an extra minute of existence, right? And I love that poeticness of it. So what he sold the whole world, the whole universe to be destroyed was just for him to live for just a little bit longer than everyone else. And it's that level of selfishness, that pathological selfishness, which actually does make it hard for richer people to, you said, I'm not going to say that millionaires can't be, good, whatever, people, but it actually psychologically, there's been a million studies on this, that the richer people get, the less empathy they are able to actually have. So it is difficult for people to break out of that pathological selfishness. And that's why we need policies there. The plutocrats are never going to stop destroying the earth and our health and our systems on their own. They're addicted to this selfishness. And that's what is happening. But yeah, you said I was being too negative at the beginning, but it really was just, it's just free form, lot of stuff. But I think the key is to end with the positive. It's fine to be annoyed with how things are. Kirsten Sinema sucks. Joe Manchin sucks. Scott Peters sucks. Kathleen Rice sucks. These are bad people doing
True.
bad things. And I'm trying to do good things, and you're trying to do good things. And they're the running through the rampaging through the kitchen, ruining my cake. But you know what? I moved to this town, got my master's in policy to take on the pharmaceutical industry. It's what I've been doing for so long here. It's ridiculous. How many years? For 16 years, I've been working on this. I know my policy, and I'm not about to accept something that's not real. What we are going to get, it's going to hurt because they ran the cow through the kitchen. But the bones of this bill fundamentally transform the pharmaceutical industry in a way that's irreversible. Irreversible. They will never be able to jack up the price of a drug over inflation forever in Medicare, in private insurance. No more ever will I go around the country and I'll have a person, after I give a speech, come up to me and tell me that they're going to not be able to take their drugs anymore that keep them alive because they're going up at 10, 15% a year. That is gone. We get rid of that. Yes, we're going to lose on some of Medicare negotiation. We can't negotiate on all drugs. We're going to negotiate on a small number of drugs each year, but it's cumulative. And over time, we will have negotiated all of the drugs. And I'm going to be working to add drugs the whole time. The key is we can negotiate drugs now. We can negotiate the prices in Part B and Part D. Out-of-pocket caps for seniors. Seniors are going to see their costs come down, and they're not going to be terrified that if they do get sick, they're going to be bankrupted by the cost of their drugs because we've got an out-of-pocket cap in there now. Insulin, man, does it infuriate me that we lost on bringing the price down so people who are uninsured are still at the mercy of this criminal cartel, but people in Medicare and with private insurance will no longer ever pay more than $35 a month for their insulin. Is that enough? No. Am I going to take it? Obviously. And then I'm going to keep fighting every day to smash the criminal cartel. This is the definition of pragmatic solidarity. So like the people who are saying, like progressives need to vote this down, it's not enough. They're trying to just live with what they consider just solidarity, right? So they think that being theoretically for a better world is enough. And the whole point of what we do is saying that's not enough because that leads to fascism every time. If people's lives don't materially get better, then Donald Trump was just the appetizer on a whole buffet of fascism that's coming after him. So we better pass policies that make people's lives better. Even if they're not perfect, we've got to get some things done and then build on them.
Yeah, well, and that's how it works. I mean, the whole reason we're trying to abolish the filibuster with such a vehemence is because legislation, once in place, is very difficult to remove. And that's what Republicans are counting on. It's literally, the words the Jim Crow filibuster get thrown around a lot. The reason the filibuster exists is because a guy called Jim Calhoun wanted to make it more difficult to get rid of slavery. So he upped the number of votes you would need to get rid of slavery. And that is what they are counting on, inertia. But if we can win, and if we can win big and do things and put them there, it's very difficult to get rid of things politically once they exist, especially when they're things that make people's lives materially better. Because, it's very difficult when you're fighting for theoretical rights, especially when you're dealing with a nation as traumatized as ours is. Because, look, a lot of public health experts have written about this extensively. We're living in an age of despair. People are lonelier than they've ever been. Our health numbers across the board, whether mental health or physical health, are very bad. People are not financially stable enough to enjoy their lives or have kids or take care of their loved ones. we are living in an age where almost everybody has been traumatized by the system we live in. So it's very difficult to talk to people who aren't used to getting what they deserve about what they deserve, which is why you just got to do it. And then once people have it, then they get defensive of those rights, because we as human beings are not like, we have this capacity to abstract and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we're still animals. Like, we like what we're used to, which is why if you're used to a system that is exploitative, sometimes your attitude becomes, well, we just need to work harder and it'll be, that's just how it is. No, it's not how it is.
See, I've got
Times are very bad.
I think I've made a little bit of the focus of my, what I've talked about today is a very small amount of people who are attacking progressives from the left. And I should just mute all of them on Twitter, because that's the only place they exist. But it does irk me, because what irks me is that our progressive champions in Congress have done more. I was here in the ACA fight when the CPC was not effective. It was anti-effective. It actually it was like, and there's great people. Some are still champions who were involved, but like, it was not an effective, the progressives got rolled just so thoroughly that they're jokes. And that's how leadership and the establishment thought of it. That is not what's happening here. Progressives are driving this agenda. And so to have some armchair Twitter analysts saying that progressives, could have done something differently or whatever, like, it's just mind-boggling to me that people see that or think that, when Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, Scott Peters, Kathleen Rice are right there saying and doing everything right. Like, we know who is making things worse. We know who are the actors that are taking what we want and demanding less from it. And usually progressives get fully rolled. What moderates wanted was just the biff. They're going to keep trying for that. They're going to try for that on the Senate side. They're going to try for that forever. But progressives have been able to make it so that at least both of these bills are getting passed out of the House, or neither of these bills are getting passed out of the House. And that's fundamentally a huge advantage strategically and tactically to where we've always been. So I don't know if this works any better than any of my other analogies, Jocelyn. Do you play, do you gamble? I can't remember. Do you hate gambling? Some people hate gambling.
I neither hate gambling nor love gambling. I'm gambling agnostic. I don't know if it exists.
Gambling agnostic. So at least not gambling atheist. So I am a very pro gambling person. I find it to be the dopamine is great and it's fun. That's the point. So like, you go into it though, and the only way to go into it if you're going to a casino is knowing that the house is going to win. They didn't build Las Vegas in the middle of the desert because the house often loses. No, the house wins. The players lose. There's a game, craps. It's the one with the dice. So it's the best gambling in all of the casino is right on the pass line and the odds. And you roll the dice. And then the house, the people who work for it are like, hey, come on in, bet on these other things. And each of those other things actually are way worse bets. But every once in a while, money starts piling up on the table. And I sit there and I watch people do this. They never take their money off the table. They just keep. So if they win, they're like, let it. And the dealers are like, let it ride. And they're like, yeah, let it ride. That sounds so cool. And they keep pushing. They keep the money on the table. There's no way, Jocelyn, that they can win. You see that? They never take their money off the table. They always gamble even when they win, thinking that maybe they'll win more next time. They didn't win enough. You have to take your money off the table. There's no way to not only not win, but you will lose everything if you don't understand that the House isn't on your side. And so the only way you win is when you have one advantage and you take it. You pocket the gains and then you demand more. That doesn't work. You can't demand at a craps table. But that's when I switched back to politics. You have to pocket your gains. If you keep gambling on your wins that you might win more, that is a surefire way to lose. So if your thing ends in you fighting to get zero, you're gonna get zero. There's no
what you're
magic.
saying is I should sell my Bitcoins. That's what I'm getting from this conversation.
Well, you know, I mean, that's a good, yes, Bitcoin is the exact same thing because it's just gambling. But if you never take your money out of Bitcoin, then all it is just a figment, right? It goes up, it goes down. Yeah, it's as cash-like as a scratcher, right? Where you are potentially a millionaire until you actually scratch that off. The same thing. You have to pull your money out. Otherwise, it's not actually money. Whether you should do that on Bitcoin or not, you know, it depends on how much you like watching the line go up and down.
It's quite a thrill. Yeah. Less liking the thrill of, right. I mean, because at the end of the day, we have won a lot. So that's something that we should be excited about. We should stop and be excited about.
$555 billion for climate is an enormous amount. Enormous. Yes.
So where are we throwing our party? 11/11 at the Eaton Hotel?
No, so I don't want to throw a party, actually. I mean, like, there will be one. There will be some. We're getting, this is me actually working. Pharma is still trying, and they've got Kathleen Rice in there with Nancy Pelosi trying to squeeze more and more out. And there is a line, obviously, where what you get is not worth, it's not better than the status quo. We're not there. But Pharma is trying to get it as, they're trying to come out winners. So they want to make it worse than what we have right now. It's a fist fight going in. And that's why when hopefully we pass this, which I think is going to be a lot harder in the Senate, like the next rounds are tough. But when we pass it, I don't think we have a party. I think that the establishments have a party. And while they're having a party, Jocelyn, we gather our comrades and we plot and scheme so that we're immediately after the passage, demanding more. Pocket your gains, take the money off the table because there's no way of winning if you leave it on. Pocket the gains, and then immediately we need to start more. And a lot of that stuff is executive action. So because it's very unlikely that stuff is going to move legislatively. But we immediately push Joe Biden to cancel student debt, right? Like we absolutely, this is one of the most popular things he can do with the signature from his pen. We push for HHS to issue compulsory licenses against pharmaceutical corporations that are acting as criminal gangs. We have the FTC smash the insulin cartel for their illegal and murderous activities of killing people through high prices. So I know the ones in my world, but let's get our Enviro friends to sit down and have a movement-wide. So there's barely even a millisecond for celebrating anything. And instead, we're immediately pushing for the next game to start and to have it all done. Well, not all. We want to fight on legislative as well. But go to Joe Biden and be like, hey, wasn't that terrible when Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema were just eating your lunch all over the place and making you look weak on purpose? Well, let's do things where they can't do that. Let's use all of the executive action and authority that comes with the White House, which you might also have noted is exactly what Donald Trump did and what Barack Obama did. Because after this first legislative section, it really is about the authority that the executive has, and they have an enormous amount of it. Is that sad that we don't get a party, though? We should have a party just randomly for something else.
Look, I'm just saying it's important to have parties, Alex. If ours is
you're in charge, aren't you? Inviting everyone to the 10-year anniversary of We Act Radio.
I am in fact in charge.
Yeah, so there's our party. We've got a 10-year anniversary. 10 years. The amount of people who told me confidently a decade ago that I could not keep a radio station going is a lot. And as I've told you before, Jocelyn, it really proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that spite is an amazing motivator. Like, you can do a lot of things. I picture all of the people, and now I'm a decade later, I'm like, yes, independent, progressive media, and we still exist. And there's our party. Let's invite all of the progressives you want to that party.
Nice. All right. I've got a party planned. It will happen to be a celebration without Alex's consent, and I'm fine with that.
No, it's a celebration. 10 years of We Act Radio, of progressive independent media, and of kicking the corporation's ass.
Well, okay. And before because we're already getting towards the end of time, I hesitate to ask, but is there a book? Are we holding up a book?
I'm gonna hold it up in a second. Yeah, it's one of the things that's giving me joy.
Oh, okay. I was gonna change the topic. You should hold up your book.
Well, what topic are you talking about?
I wanted to talk a little bit about Virginia / voting rights.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Well, okay, then I will. This is it's not out yet, but this is Zychek's book.
Oh, I saw that. I was like, what is that?
Yeah, he's gonna be like, it's a secret or something. He'll get mad at me, but this is gonna be it's out early next year, and this is just absolute genius. This is about how the pharma corporation. So Alex Zychek is the best writer that you can read, and this is an explanation of how we got to where we are with pharma, and how easy it would be to create a system where people don't die because they can't afford their drugs, where we've already vaccinated the world, and all that is missing is political will. But actually, political will is hard to create when there's so much money on the other side. So Jocelyn, let's go to Virginia then, I guess.
What are your thoughts on the Virginia election?
I have pretty normal progressive thoughts on it. So like, I can get in trouble for this because people. Terry McAuliffe is a terrible candidate. Like, if I were to like list the terriblest candidates, he's right there. It's like, oh yeah, boom, right there, Terry McAuliffe. What's his claim to fame? Being like a corrupt hanger-on of a administration of that already doesn't have much love, and lost a presidency, and he's lost the governorship before. Like, really? This dude sucks. And also, all they did was ran against Trump. And you know who's not in office? Trump. He's not in office. So why would you think you're like, let's run a terrible candidate on the, and I'll say, we didn't know the playbook wasn't going to work. I knew. I'm like, you know what people vote on? Money, pocketbook issues. They vote on their lives. That's what they vote on. And, you know, they're like, oh my God, can you believe that there is this armed insurrection? And people are like, yeah, that worries me at some level, but my gas prices worry me more.
Right.
Low wage jobs worries me more. And McAuliffe was, instead of running on $15 minimum wage, he did a little bit because he was pushing it. But the whole like thing that they tried to roll out was this anti-Trump message. So my takeaways from it are Mark Warner's Virginia Democratic Party, because he's the godfather of that whole thing, is bad. They're neoliberal bad, and they win when the rest of the country pulls them to win, and they lose when there's not that wave effect because they themselves don't know how to win elections. And it's sad but true. And the only other takeaway from that is they better pass the Build Back Better, because running against Trump does not win. And then the ray of sunshine in there, this maybe they'll start listening to me. Seniors held their 2020 numbers held into 2021 for McAuliffe, and seniors vote every single election. So we did not lose seniors, and that means we have a chance in the midterms, because that's who's going to be voting. But we have to give them stuff that actually materially improves their lives, the number one of which is letting Medicare negotiate drug prices. So I would say the takeaway from Virginia and New Jersey is running against Trump doesn't work. Running on accomplishments that make people's lives better does work, and can even overcome the Trump turnout advantage, which is, you still saw that in New Jersey. But the sort of corollary or synthesis of those two is, if the Democrats don't pass Build Back Better and have nothing to actually hang their hat on, we're going to get wiped out worse than 2010.
Well, and I am a Virginian. You know, it's really interesting. I've been there since the beginning with Terry McAuliffe, and he's never performed terribly well for all the reasons you're saying, Alex. I mean, Virginia is a beautiful, complex state with everything from Appalachia to, you know, right outside the Beltway suburbs. So it is calling for a candidate who can speak to all of those different ecosystems and communities. And that's definitely not a centrist establishment Democrat. It's just not. I mean, there is so much going on with the state of Virginia, with climate change, with the I mean, there's a lot of poverty in that state. And I don't really know how people outside Virginia think of us, because again, it's like, when you grow up somewhere, like, it's the water you swim in. But yeah, I mean, there is a lot of poverty in the state of Virginia, a lot. And so a shiny candidate who's run for governor, like, what, 3 or 4 times now? It's just embarrassing.
3, and he's lost twice. So he'd lost 50% of the time before, and now 66% of the time. And they're like, who could have foreseen?
Get a hobby.
Who could have foreseen that he would have lost? You're like, I can, because he lost before. Like, yes. But I'm telling you, and maybe I shouldn't tell this story, but I can. The Virginia Democratic Party does not want the help of progressives, Democratic Socialists, radicals, the Bernie Crats, the Warren wing. I was a Bernie Sanders surrogate at the Virginia Democratic Party gala, which was actually funded in large part by Michael Bloomberg, who they held up as the future of the Democratic Party. This is 2 days before Elizabeth Warren literally reached over on the debate stage, grabbed the skin of his face and just ripped it off. And everyone's like, oh my God, she killed him on stage. And the Virginia Democratic Party were like, oh, this guy's the future. There's no one who's going to beat him. They literally pulled me off the rostrum during my allotted speaking time, because that's how corporate Dem they are. They didn't even want to give the Bernie Sanders so they put me at the very end, and I had 4 minutes. I had my timer on, and at 2 minutes, the chair of the party came on stage and gave me the hook, because that's not the message that they want. They don't want our help. They don't want to talk about standing together to beat the influence of organized money, because they are organized money. And unfortunately, that structure exists throughout the country in varying degrees, where the institutionalized Democratic Party is bad. They're bad. They're not interested in what we're talking about. They are interested in some sort of 1990s Bill Clinton-esque welfare reform thing, where, you know, they just point at Republicans and are like, look how bad these guys are. You should vote for us. That's not enough anymore. Look around the country. Look at the devastation that neoliberalism has wrought. Look at the pharmaceutical corporations. So we're talking about lowering drug prices. Let's talk about the fact that the FDA waved through OxyContin. If you haven't watched Dope Sick on Hulu, please, so that you can understand a little bit of my frustration and rage at things, watch that. They addicted the country with the help of a neoliberal mindset at the FDA that said industry are actually the job creators, the problem solvers, the private sector are going to save us. And you're like, when has that happened? They don't. The government needs to step in because the plutocrats, the private sector, are never going to restrain themselves. So I will then, my hope on all the BBB. I was terrified at COP26 when there was a big thing coming out of that, like the banks were going to save us from climate change. And you're like, the banks aren't going to save us from anything at all. But the march of progressive populism, of left populism, is arduous and it's tough. But one of the key things that you have to remember is how to not lose all of your money when you're playing craps at the casino. Jocelyn, I want to make sure that I made my point extremely well. If you don't take your money off the table, you walk away with nothing. I hope that's what came across in the show today.
Sell your Bitcoins.
And what that means on Build Back Better is that we have to pass Build Back Better. And then immediately after we pocket our gains, we demand more. This is what this is the only strategy that actually lets us win anything and build on stuff. And I am super excited that Pramila Jayapal, Bernie Sanders, we have a bicameral progressive power center now that cannot be ignored. And we will just keep making things better. I'm going to be pissed forever that Joe Manchin kept dental coverage out of Build Back Better. I mean, forever. I will hate him forever for it because people are going to die from it, because people are going to suffer from it, because people won't be able to chew food from it. It has absolute measurable impact. And because he doesn't even understand it enough, he says it saves money. When we add dental benefits to Medicare, it saves money because it keeps people out of the hospital, which is where it costs money. That's Medicare Part A costs money. Medicare Part B, when we add dental benefits, it costs money, but it lowers the cost in Part A by keeping people out of the hospital. And he blocked that. He did that. Kirsten Sinema made it impossible for us to negotiate on all drugs. I will never forgive her for that. But I will fight against people who say because we can't negotiate on all drugs, we should negotiate on no drugs. That doesn't make any sense. We have to pocket our gains and demand more. And when we all do that together, when enviro and economic justice and racial justice and all of us stand together, then we can actually turn this ship. We won't have to listen to Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema anymore.
And on that note, thank you for being with us, you guys. And hopefully next week we'll be talking about how we took our money off the table, right? By next week.
Hopefully the House passes it right now.
You and I will be a little bit hungover, probably. We have our party next Thursday, but.
What is that? We Act Radio? Oh, yeah. You're right. 10 years, a decade on. All right, everybody.
We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.